This is Math 2, 11.6 notes. That's Math 2, Unit 11, Lesson 6 notes. And we're doing homework notes today, which means you should have your worksheet 6 out. And I'm going to go through and just do some problems from this worksheet as notes. Okay, so this worksheet does have a lot of information in it, and that's because we're tying everything in together. It says graphing and solving using different methods. So we're going to use the factoring method, complete the square method, quadratic formula method, kind of combining it all in one place. So there is a lot to this worksheet. Okay. Solve one part by completing the square, one by quadratic formula for each problem. Okay, and factoring, sorry. Solve one by factoring, one by completing the square, and one by quadratic for each problem. Okay, so for 1, ABC, we're going to pick one of these methods. For 2, ABC, we're going to do one each of these methods, and the same for 3. So we're going to have factor, complete the square, quadratic, one of each, one of each, one of each. Okay, so when you're taking the test and you're asked to solve, how do you know to choose which one? Because everything before this has been very specific. Solve by factoring, solve by completing the square, solve using the quadratic formula. Now it's just pretty much saying pick one. How do you know which one to pick? Okay, I like to look for factoring first. Can I factor it? If not, what else can I do? If it looks really complicated and like, ooh, I can't tell if I can factor, then I may just go straight to quadratic formula. Okay, so something like this. In my head, I can tell factors of 9 are 1 and 9 and 3 and 3, and there's no way that's going to add up to 4, so this one's not factorable. I can tell that. Let's see here. 15, that's 3 and 5. That could work, so I'm going to put a little note there. I'm going to put an F for factor. Okay. And then between these two, which one do I want to complete the square and which one do I want to use quadratic formula? Complete the square, I like to use complete the square when the leading coefficient is 1 and the second term is even. That's this one here. You see that leading term is not 1, nor is that middle term even. So 1 in the front, even in the middle, I would complete the square. Why do you want it even in the middle? Because you're going to cut in half and square it eventually. So you like that number. It doesn't have to be even, but it works out nicer if it is. So that's going to be my complete the square, which means this is my quadratic. So I pretty much go in that order. Which one can I factor? If I cannot factor, can I complete the square? And as my last resort is the quadratic. Some kids will go straight to quadratic every single time because quadratic works on all of them. There is no has to be even, or it has to have a leading coefficient of 1, or it has to be factorable. This works every single time. So some kids will go straight to that every single time because it always works. Me, I save that for the end. I like to factor, complete the square, and then quadratic. Okay, so factor, easiest, double bubble, x and x. And factors of 15 are 1 and 15, or 3 and 5. So I'm going to use 3 and 5. I know my two signs are different. One's positive, one's negative. It looks like this one should be negative, and that one should be positive to give me positive 3, negative 5, negative 2. And because it says solve, I use the zero product property. Set each one equal to 0 and solve. And I get my two solutions. Negative 3, positive 5. No parentheses because it's not an ordered pair. Those are two separate x values. Okay. Second, complete the square. That's where you move your 9 over to the other side. X squared plus 4x plus blank equals negative 9 plus blank. And I am going to move that over just a smidge. Okay. X squared plus 4x plus blank equals positive 9 plus blank. Okay, where did I get the positive 9 from? I added the 9 to the other side. 0 plus 9 is 9. Put plus blanks because I'm going to complete the square. Cut the 4 in half, that's 2. 2 squared is 4. These are all in previous lessons that we have done up to this point. Double bubble. I know my two signs have to be the same. This tells me they're both positive. Looks like it's going to be 2 and 2. 2 times 2 is 4. 2x plus 2x is the 4x. X plus 2 quantity squared equals 13. Square root both sides. Don't forget your plus minus. Undo. X plus 2 equals plus or minus root 13. Subtract the 2 over to the other side. X equals negative 2 plus or minus root 13. Negative 2 plus or minus root 13. Two solutions, just like this one had two solutions, only they're not whole numbers like this. These are quadratics, decimals, irrational numbers. Okay. Next one, last one in this section, we're going to solve by quadratic formula. Okay, it has to equal 0, which it does, and I'm going to up here label because I don't have much room. A is 3, B is negative 7, and C is negative 5. Can you see that? A is 3, B is negative 7, and C is negative 5. And then we plug it in. X equals opposite of blank plus or minus the square root of blank squared minus blank 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 all over blank blank. Now I've told you guys before to quickly and always first fill in the 4 and the 2 because those are always going to be 4 and 2, those two spots there. Everything else just depends on what A, B, and C are. Negative B, so opposite of B would be positive 7. B squared, so that's negative 7, minus 4A, C, all over 2A. And then you work it all out. Negative 7, and I forgot to put my negative in there. Okay, so I'm going to say that again. Opposite of B plus or minus the square root of B squared minus 4AC all over 2A. So there's your B and your B. There's your 4AC 2A. Okay, opposite of negative 7 is positive 7 plus or minus the square root of 49. 4 times 3 times 5 is 60. And a negative make a plus all over 6. 7 plus or minus the square root of 49 plus 60 is 109 all over 6. And then you try to break the 109 down into any pairs. Nothing comes out. This here is your final answer. Also two answers. 7 plus root 109 over 6 and 7 minus the square root of 109 over 6 is just we leave our answer looking like this. All right, so we have our factoring, complete the square, quadratic. Okay, so you guys are going to do these on your own. I will just quickly go through and help you figure out which one's which. Okay, so first thing I would do is look between factoring and complete the square. Okay. If I had to choose one here, there's only one here that's nice for complete the square. Can you see which one it is? Leading coefficient is 1, and the middle term is even. That would be this one here. So this one here looks like it's going to be the complete the square, which means which one here would I factor? Now, it specifically said at the beginning, choose one to factor, choose one to quadratic, and one to complete the square. Now on the test, if it just said factor and you had a choice, some kids will look at either one of these and say, oh, I don't want to factor those. I'm just going to go straight to quadratic formula. That is your choice. Okay, I will tell you right now that this is the one that factors. I'm going to put an F for factor, which means this one is your quadratic formula. Okay, bottom one, I like to look for complete the square first. Which one's nice to complete the square? Leading coefficient is 1, middle term is even. That would be this one right here. Oh, I wrote that incorrectly. This should be complete the square, CS, not QS. Okay, now factoring, which one factors? I can see this one has a GCF, and after the GCF, it's going to factor even more. So I'm going to put this one here as a factor, and this one here as the quadratic formula. All right, I'll start this one off with you. 3x squared plus 2x minus 3 equals 0. That's because 3 is your GCF, and then you double bubble and factor. You guys can finish from there. Remember, when you factor zero product property, this equals 0, this equals 0. 3 by itself cannot equal 0, so the 3 on the outside is kind of just hanging out there. It doesn't have any impact, any part of your answer. You can just ignore it. Okay, I'm going to come down here. Solve the following problem 3 times. So you're going to do this one by factoring, quadratic formula, and complete the square. You should get the same answer every single time. It's just trying to get you used to knowing there's 3 different methods and see which method you prefer and why. Okay, so you're going to do 1 by factoring. When you factor, you will take out your GCF first. X squared minus 6x minus 7 equals 0. Double bubble. Remember that 2 by itself is not going to equal 0, so you can just ignore it. You factor and solve. Here, you're going to do your A is 2, B is negative 12, and C is negative 14, and plug it into your quadratic formula. And here is where you're going to do 2x squared minus 12x plus blank equals 14 plus blank, because you're going to add the 14 over, plus blank on each side, cut in half and square it. And I'm going to pause right there because remember, when I've said in class you cannot complete the square with that 2 in the front. Remember, I said that has to be a 1. So what do? I do want to go over this one, so part C I will do with you because it's been a while since we've done one like that. We did one like this back in notes quite a few lessons ago, but I will review it again today. Okay, we can't have that 2 there, so we factor it out. And I'm going to take a step further back, and I jumped the gun on that one. We can't have that 2 there, and we are going to factor it out, but if you remember in notes, I told you guys to add the 14 first, so I'm going to do that. 2x squared minus 12x, no blank, equals positive 14. Then I factor out the 2. Again, this is in one of our lessons that we've had. X squared minus 6x, then I put my blank, equals 14 plus blank. Now technically from the beginning you could divide out the 2 and it be gone, but I haven't showed it to you before, so I don't want to jump into it that way. So this is the way I've shown this before, so I'm going to continue. Okay, take the 6, cut in half, you get negative 3. Negative 6 cut in half is negative 3. Square it, you get 9. Remember, because of the 2 on the outside, you have to multiply it back in, and 2 times 9 is 18. So I get 2, double bubble, and 14 plus 18, and factor. Okay, so I know it's going to be minus and minus, and it's going to be 3 and 3. And I'm going to solve because I'm solving here. I'm not rewriting in vertex form. I'm solving, so I'm going to divide both sides by 2. And then I'll let you guys finish from there. Square root, plus or minus, move things over. You should get two numbers here, same 2 numbers there. Same 2 numbers every single time. Okay. And after you've done all three, you choose which one you like best. Okay, back side. I do want to do a few of them from the back side. I know these notes are taking longer, but I'm also doing homework questions at the same time. And we don't have any class time to go over questions, so I'm doing it all together in this video. Okay, number 6. Graph the following parabola written in vertex form and determine the key features. Okay, so vertex form is there. Vertex form is really nice because you just find the vertex. Opposite of the inside, outside stays the same. There's not a whole lot of extra work. Axis of symmetry is always the x value of your vertex. We've talked about that in previous units. How do you find x-intercepts? You set the equation equal to 0, and you solve. All right, I'm going to subtract the 2. Next, I'm going to divide the negative 2 to get rid of that there because you cannot distribute that. Negative 2 divided by negative 2 is 1 equals x minus 3 quantity squared. Square root both sides, plus or minus, undo. I'm going to put the x minus 3 on the other side. X minus 3 equals plus or minus the square root of 1 is 1. Add your 3. X equals 3 plus or minus 1. So you do 3 plus 1, 3 minus 1, and you get 4 comma 2. So my x-intercepts are 4, 0, and 2, 0. All stuff we've done before. Y-intercepts, you plug in 0. Now notice this is not the standard form is the nice one where it's just 0, 0, last number. That is not this one here. You cannot just say, oh, my y-intercept is 2. Here, you could, your y-intercept's negative 3. Your y-intercept's positive 3. You cannot do it on these two down here or these two up here. You actually have to plug in 0 and work it out. And I don't have much room, so I'll try to squeeze it in here. Okay, y equals negative 2 parentheses 0 minus 3 is negative 3 squared plus 2. I got negative 3 because of 0 minus 3. And where did I get 0? Y-intercept, x is 0. Negative 3 squared is 9, so I have negative 2 times 9 plus 2, which gives me negative 18 plus 2, which equals negative 16. So 0 comma negative 16. Okay, so they didn't make my graph big enough for me to get my y-intercept in there, but as long as we know it, we're good. Okay, vertex is 3, 2. X-intercepts are 4, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 0, and 2, 0. And my axis of symmetry is x equals 3. And I can see that it is symmetrical right there. It's going to open down, which makes sense because that is negative, so my parabola should be opening down. And my y-intercept would be way down here at negative 16. My graph wasn't big enough to show it, but I know it's down there. Okay? So you can do number 7 on your own. It's very similar. Remember, you can't take the square root of a negative when you're looking for x-intercepts. So if you take this, and that happens here, if you take the square root of a negative, what does that mean about your x-intercepts? There are none. Okay, number 9. This one is not in vertex form. Gosh darn it, not in vertex form. What do? You have 2 choices. Complete the square to make it in vertex form, or you do your x equals negative b over 2a and plug it in to find your vertex. I like this way better if I can. If it doesn't say, hey, write it in vertex form, which it doesn't, it just says find the vertex. Since it doesn't say write in vertex form, I could take the shortcut and use negative b over 2a. Now, if you wanted to, you could move over the 3, factor out the 3, cut in half, square it, blah, 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 complete the square. It's easier if you just use the shortcut. Okay, so I am going to quickly, over here in this corner, write down a is 3 and b is 6. X equals opposite B over 2A. Opposite B is 6, A is 3. So I have negative 6 over 6, which equals negative 1. Now remember, that's two things. It's the x value of my vertex as well as the axis of symmetry. That negative b over 2a is the axis of symmetry, which is also the x value of the vertex. And how do we find the corresponding y value? We've been doing this since last unit. We plug it in. Y equals 3 blank squared plus 6 blank plus 3. And you plug in the negative 1. Negative 1, you square first. Negative 1 squared is 1 times 3 is 3. Plus 6 times negative 1 is minus 6 minus 3. And sorry, that last one there is a plus 3. Okay, so I get negative 1 squared is 1 times 3 is 3. 6 times negative 1 is negative 6 plus 3. 3 minus 6 is negative 3, plus 3 is 0, so my vertex is negative 1 comma 0. Where did the 0 come from? I did my negative b over 2a and plugged it in. X-intercepts, plug in 0. Now this is the one where I do 0 plus 3, and my last number is 3. So, I'm sorry, that's my y-intercept, 0, 3. 0, 3 for the y-intercept, and for the x-intercept, I'm going to have to solve. Now, I do not have enough room, so I'm going to use a separate piece of paper and solve. Okay, x-intercepts, I make the equation equal to 0. 3x squared plus 6x plus 3. Now, you have choices. You could factor, try to complete the square, or quadratic formula. I'm going to try to factor first because that's the easiest, and if I can't, then I'll try other methods. Okay, 0 equals, I can factor out of 3, x squared plus 2x plus 1, and let's see if that continues to factor. X and x, what times what? Oh, my two signs are the same. The neighbor tells me they're both positive. The only factors of 1 are 1 and 1. Does that work? 1x and 1x gives me the 2x. It sure indeed does. 0 product property. 3 by itself cannot equal 0. You can ignore it because 3 by itself doesn't do anything. There's no variable there with it. Subtract 1. Subtract 1. X equals negative 1. X equals negative 1. They're both the same. I don't have to write them twice. My x-intercepts are negative 1 comma 0, and it's just the 1. And that's all the information there. And then I graph. Vertex is negative 1, 0. Axis symmetry is negative 1. My x-intercept is that negative 1, 0, and my y-intercept is 3. 1, 2, 3, symmetry on the other side. And I have my very thin graph here. And there it is. Okay, and lastly, number 10, graph it, vertex, axis of symmetry, yada, yada, yada. This is just like the one that we did in our previous unit. Only difference is it's already factored for you. Okay, so what form is this? This is the intercept form, meaning you can find your x-intercepts. So I'm going to do that first. X-intercepts, I set the equation equal to 0, and I solve. 0 product property. Negative 1/2 by itself is not going to equal 0. X plus 2 equals 0. X minus 4 equals 0. Subtract, you get negative 2. Add, you get positive 4. So negative 2, 0, and 4, 0. Now, if you remember what we did back in the last unit, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, we counted our way to the middle. So do that now. Count, 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 and find your way to the middle. Okay, did you find it? The middle should be 1. That's x equals 1, which is the x value of the vertex, and like our previous problem, we plug it in. I'm going to let you guys do that on your own. You plug it in. You do get a decimal. Decimals are our friends. It's okay. You plug in 1, 1 plus 2, 1 minus 4, multiply times negative 1/2, pause it, plug it in, and hit play. Okay, you should end up with 4.5. I will show you really quick what it should look like. You plugged in 1, so 1 plus 2, 1 minus 4. In order of operations, you do all the work. Negative 1/2, 3 times negative 3, do all the work. You should end up with positive 4.5. Okay? And y-intercept, I'll do that here. I plug in 0 for x. This is not the shortcut one. I actually have to show work. 0 plus 2, 0 minus 4, negative 1/2 times 2 times negative 4. And I continue, negative 1/2 times negative 8. And I end up with positive 4. So 0, 4 for the y-intercept. All right. So vertex is 1 up 4.5. 1, 2, 3, 4.5. X-intercepts are here and here. That means it's opening down, and my y-intercept is 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Symmetry other side, which makes sense because if you look at your equation that was given, it is a negative, which means it's opening down, which means we're all good. Okay, I know it was long, but again, this is homework questions included with the notes. That is it for this lesson.